firstly want to apologize for the two shows that we had forego. One as a result of sore throat, and secondly, because we have decided to observe the Indian Arrival Day celebration, which is one of the historical day in the country of Trinidad and Tobago. So, of course, I know I receive a lot of calls from you as to why we are not on air, but that's the situation. And, of course, here I am today. I want to first announce that yesterday there was screening for the SRC, which is the Siparia Regional Corporation. I want to inform you that your humble servant filed nomination for one of the opportunities that is available. You know, one person asked me, Mr. Roberts, why you file for that position? And I said that, look, as far as I'm concerned, it's not a position. It's simply an opportunity to do what needs to be done, and that is to break down the wall that the PNM has built over the decade in Point 14 and Laborie. This wall where they tend to make it and to make you believe that it is impossible to remove the PNM from Point 14 and Laborie respectively. It is my intention to utilize that opportunity to break the wall that the PNM has built and to bring Point 14 and the constituency of Laborie home in the safe hands of the United National Congress. So I did not apply for a position. I applied for the opportunity to make what needs to happen within Point 14 and Laborie. So that's my take. I say no more on that for now. I don't want to prejudice the minds of those who have interviewed those of us who went to the screening. Laborie, we in SRC, we also presented what we can safely call potential candidates who were screened for the Brighton Vestany seat, the Palo Seco seat, and Erin, the Erin seat. Of course, I must let you know, Erin, that I know you have suffered under the hands of the PNM, and therefore my daughter Chanel Roberts was screened for that electoral district to rescue you, if successful, through the screening process, to rescue you out of the wicked, evil hands of the PNM, just as Nicola and, of course, Khadijah, who would be, if successful, coming to you to look for your support in the Brighton Vestany electoral district, another seat that the PNM hold on to and hold on to it strong. So those are the areas that we going into in the direct Labre constituency. Of course, we have Javed, who is also foot in Faizabad and foot in Labre. I believe that Javed Mohammed Bongri starts somewhere down at the Point Door area. If you come in, if you're heading to San Fernando, it will be on the left-hand side from the Point Door area, and it will bring you back up to that area in Rosilak. And of course, Derek Bowen, who also play a very important part in the SIPA Regional Corporation as an outgoing councillor, also have a foot in part of the Rosilak area, which also represent the constituency of Labre. Before I move on to what I want to speak to you about tonight, I want to also encourage you to take note that you will have to do what you have to do in order to bring about some sort of ease within those districts. But that's a conversation for another time. But today, ladies and gentlemen, I want to speak a little bit. I am not sure if Archie have that film ready, where Keith Christopher Rowley, I believe it's at some breakfast or some tea party or some dinner or some kind of eating business. I don't know what I mean. Some kind of eating business, and had a lot to say in relation to the requests by the UNC, the opposition leader, to have observers be brought to Trinidad and Tobago to witness the local election. So we will get into that subject here this afternoon at the appropriate time. Once we have no problem, we will have the phone lines up at the appropriate time, and you will have the opportunity to call and speak to us and to give us your thoughts on whether or not observers should be in Trinidad and Tobago. I would not prejudice that conversation, but I will leave it there for now. So if Archie have that clipping ready, I will let Archie start the program with that clipping at this point in time.
There will be no international observers at the local government elections that are upcoming. This from the Prime Minister, Dr. Keith Rowley, as he spoke about the upcoming poll at a breakfast meeting hosted by the People's National Movement.
There's one due in a few weeks. Some of our colleagues are telling me I must invite foreigners to come and observe our local government election. No. What is it we expect to happen here in a local election that we have to invite foreigners to come and look at it? They're free to come if they wish. It's a free country. But that is not part of the government system. Why are we selling ourselves short? You know what we do? We send people from Trinidad and Tobago from our election and boundaries commission to observe other people's election because they see us as superstars in that business.
So that's the words of your Prime Minister. And what Rowley is saying to you, ladies and gentlemen, and the manner in which he speak will tell you that I believe for some reason Keith Rowley believed that he owns Trinidad and Tobago. Before we get into our discourse as to whether or not this claim is justified, before, ladies and gentlemen, we examine for ourselves if we should have observers at the local government election, as he stressed that why we should have people coming to observe our local election. I will tell you why in a little bit. But you, the people, I want you to look into your minds and look into the history of Keith Rowley. Coming into office in 2015, and all that you have experienced, the behavior, the words echo, I want you to examine for yourself. While the narrative and the conversation will say to you that we have never had observers coming into a local election, and why must we have it now? And while the conversation will say to you that local election is not as serious as general election, and while the story will be may suggest to you that it can well be a defense by Kamla Prasad Bisesa all that narrative, all those stories, all those utterances is of no importance to Victor Roberts. However, what is important to me is, one, free and fair elections, and two, the independency of the electoral process. And three, the democratic process that must be respected and upheld in any country. that will boast of democracy. While you dissect in your minds my utterances, and while you look with the inner mind while you examine the inner mind and you look and you understand the level of erosion of our democracy in this country, while you have taste and feel and see the danger, while you have witnessed the blatant disrespect for law and order by a prime minister, while you have seen the severe acts of the dictatorial tendencies that have been expressed, and not only expressed, but you have looked into the danger, while you feel the effects as the dictator clear the pathway with no regard for law and order. You must understand, Trinidad and Tobago, that you cannot take anything for granted under the PNM government. So let me start the ball rolling. So Keith Rowley asks us why we selling ourselves short, and asking for international agencies to come in to witness an election, while according to him, we have sent individuals abroad to witness elections. The difference, Keith Rowley, the difference with all that you have said is that when we send members of the EBC outside to witness, to observe election, they go, Keith Rowley, without a bias. They go with an independent mindset. They go with independent individuals. They go without individuals who will have ties to other sides in those elections. You, the people of Trinidad and Tobago, while Rowley believes that he owns this country, and while he believes that he said no, and no it is, I want to tell you here today we must never accept no. We must never accept no with any observers under the PNM. I want to ask if he does not understand why we have to sell ourselves short and observers. So if he don't understand, let me tell him. I want to tell him here this evening. I want to tell you, Keith Rowley boy, that while you can play politics with the minds of those who have no vision, you will not be able to play politics with facts. Because we will always remove the fiction from your speeches. So you boasted that we send people from the EBC there. In our country, Trinidad and Tobago, there is a public perception, and that perception, ladies and gentlemen, is not a perception by make-believe. It is not a perception because somebody came up with some narrative and say, look, we just don't like Keith Rowley. It is not, ladies and gentlemen, that some opposition group in Trinidad and Tobago decide that we will create some kind of mischief in an election because we just decide to oppose the PNM. The public perception in Trinidad and Tobago and in the international community is that people would not, the evidence are there, overwhelming, where you cannot trust this PNM government. You cannot trust Keith Rowley government. When you have a government that would appoint relatives of high-ranking PNM officials into the heart, into the bowels, into the body, at the head of the Election and Boundaries Commission, the entity which is charged with responsibility to make pronouncement on election matters. The only authority, according to the Constitution of Trinidad and Tobago, the Election and Boundaries Commission has the sole responsibility and authority to declare the outcome of an election, whether it's local or whether it's general. And when a government who will tell you that we send profile of the same entity that is charged with responsibility to declare in your country. Oh, they wasn't looking there. Oh, they wasn't looking in that direction. But I hear a pack of educated clowns who clap when Rowley talk and spew that rubbish into the hearing of their nation. They clap and they laugh when he said no observers. Allegedly brainwash that crowd of senseless individuals by telling them that we send people from the EBC to witness and observe because they tell us, they hold us, they look at us as some superstar. But why they will look at the EBC from an international level as a superstar when you examine the EBC in your own country, they are not superstars, they are monsters. I am here to bring it real and factual to you. Whether you want to listen it, you want to pay attention to it, I am giving you the facts. And if your ears can't take it, then turn your device off. But your ears could take the idiotic talk that Rowley will say to you when he said no observers. And people will buy into that. They will buy into that. But the same superstars on international soil is monsters on their own soil. Where is the independency of the EBC when you will have, ladies and gentlemen, high-ranking government officials, family, sitting at the helm, managing the affairs? So my issue is not with local government. My issue is not with whether we ever had or we never had before at that level. That is not my issue. My issue is not even those who will tell you that Kamla would use it as an excuse. That is not even my issue. My issue, ladies and gentlemen, is the democratic process in this country. My issue is to ensure law and order be obeyed by those in authority, whether you're in government, you're in opposition, or you are just a natural citizen operating throughout the length and breadth of this Twin Island Republic. That is my position. So he sells a message to your hearing that we selling ourselves short. We not selling ourselves short, Keith Rowley. It is you and your government who continues to cut the democratic process short in this country to ensure that the people's national movement be victorious by any means necessary. How could we as a country who have experienced firsthand a lying prime minister, a prime minister who stood up and lied to you on many occasions. A prime minister who inflated himself into an independent commission, an independent entity, just as the EBC, and just as they have infiltrated the EBC by the appointments of high political PNM operatives. The Prime Minister confessed to you that he was the one who infiltrated President House, who ended up bringing to naught a whole commission that you call the Police Service Commission. Influence a president, a lecturer, a well-learned individual, and put a merit list in reverse gear, while the Constitution only make provisions for the meritless to be in first gear. Create a second gear that they call the reverse. Mash the whole commission up. Escape even without an investigation by another institution that ought to be independent, the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service and the Commissioner of Police Office. Escape without a shadow of a doubt. He confirmed, I was the man. I am the individual. And today, that man has the audacity to tell this country that he said no. And no, it must be simply because he said, he who can be proven lying on a number of occasions, he said that we, EBC, is considered by the international community as superstars. Today, I want to put on record that while Rowley will wash your brain with stupidity and superstars, I am putting on record that the EBC in Trinidad and Tobago, they are monsters. I don't know what's wrong with you people in this country. I don't know what is wrong with your brain and your mindset, because you are so easily brainwashed and sidetracked and short-sighted and dumb to the reality that continues to hurt you on a daily basis. just because the proud black man tell you that the black pig die, it's here, and that is the onlyest reason why the pig is black. Trinidad and Tobago, we have seen the terror. We have tasted the bitterness. We have listened to the idiotic statements and rejoice by such individual. Today, ladies and gentlemen, we are without hope because of the infiltration and the damage that was done to our democracy. We are without hope. And while we can play politics on whichever side of the field you want to play, the reality in this country is that Keith Rowley government cannot be trusted even with a local election. So I don't care. I'm not interested whether or not we ever had observers for a local election. I don't care. If you cannot trust a government with small things, how can you trust them in big things? The words of Patrick Mervyn Augustus Manning. In his case, he speaks to an individual. And the individual that Manning speaks to, it is the individual that you trust. I want to call tonight on the right-thinking PNM citizens of this country. I want to call on you tonight, the right-thinking PNM people. To stand up for what is right. You see, some are always so blinded that all you believe that all the missteps, all the misguidance, all the lies, all the hardship, all the corruption, all the thievery, and all that is happening by this government, some of you believe that that will only affect the UNC. That is what they have you to believe. They have you to believe that all that the Prime Minister Keith Rowley is doing will not affect you. It will affect those on the other side. They have you to believe that the pressure that you feeling, that is not for you. That is for the UNC. That is for the East Indian people. That is what they will have you to believe. But while you're feeling the pain and the agony, while you're feeling the pressure, you're still telling yourself that I could bear it, because this is not really directed to me. But I just feeling a little pressure and pain because it is directed to them on the other side. That is what they have you to believe. And some of you so dotish and foolish that you believe that. You can't provide food for your family, but you believe the pressure is not for you. You can't pay a bill, and IRC going to raise utilities just now, and you still saying that is not for me, that is for the Indian business people because I don't have no business. You can't even buy books, and you're still saying, even though my children don't see, that is not for me, that pressure is for them. And all that you will have yourself to believe, that is not for you, but is for them. The people who suffer the most in the country is you, the PNM people. The people that under pressure the most in this country is you, the PNM people. The people who cannot provide the most in this country is you, the PNM people. But the PNM have you to believe that the pressure is not for you, it's for them over there. Why? And I want to agree with Rowley here now, right now. Why are we selling ourselves short in this country by the hands of Keith Rowley and his government? That is my question. Why are we selling ourselves short? Because the shortness is not the doing of the opposition. The shortness is not the doing of the UNC. The shortness, let me bring it more real, is not even the doing of the Indian people in the country. The shortness that you receiving is from your own people. Your own black man who tell you he proud. But you could never be proud in the condition that the proud man have you in. You could never be proud. And if you say you're proud, you're a deceitful, wicked idiot. If you say you proud that the PNM under Keith Rowley, then you is a devil. You is a wicked animal to tell your children that what they're going through is not for them. It is for them on the other side. But you just have to go through it because the proud black man really doing it to affect those on the other side. Then you're more senile than I could ever imagine. The request for observers Trinidad and Tobago is not to make Kamla Persad Bissessar look good. Let me tell you again. The request for observers in Trinidad and Tobago in an election that will affect you directly the most is not to make Kamala look good. The request is not to make Kamala look good. The request is to ensure that your will, that your political will be adhered to. That is what the request is about. It's not to make the UNC look good. It's not to make the MPs at the UNC look good. It's not to make the leader of the UNC look good. It is for your democratic right. It is for your democratic right to be adhered to. That is what it is about. It is you, the voter, to ensure that your vote goes to whoever you choose to vote for. Always seeing this thing upside down on a mango tree. And no matter how well try to pelt it, or you will never pick it. Because this is not about Kamala. This is not about UNC. This is about your civic right. It is about ensuring that the process is legitimate. It is about ensuring that your vote be recognized according to your finger and your X on the ballot. That is what it is about. That is what it is about, Trinidad. You have a government who interfere with every democratic, independent institution that ever exists in the history of the country. You have a government that enter from the heights of the judiciary to the pit of the police service. You have a government that influence learned individuals that we would call senior counsels. People who the juniors will look up to and aspire to be like. Today, because of political interference, by the way of the dollar, the mighty Harold Melvin, that touches the minds of set individuals who would have once stood up and uphold the Constitution and ensure that the government would have been held accountable to law. To law. You have allowed one man and a few individuals who would benefit constantly from the wealth of the country, the wealth of the treasury that will never trickle down to you. You have allowed one man to stretch his hands and to push his fingers inside everything that should remain authentic and pure. Contaminate every clean fountain that once exists to protect you, the citizens of this country. The Constitution, ladies and gentlemen, it gives you the protection. It gives you the freedom. It protects you. And you have allowed one individual to trample and break down every area of independency, every form of protection that would exist under under the Constitution to protect you, your rights, your children, your grandchildren, and the future of the country, we have allowed one man and a few loyal individuals. And I tell you, I said to you on 2 lives ago, I tell you about loyalty. I tell you about the danger of loyalty. I tell you the danger of loyalty. When there is no integrity in loyalty, it becomes a mass weapon of destruction, not only to the political party, but to the country. I tell you, and because of a few loyal soldiers who is loyal for the wrong reason in this government, today we are perishing. And we have no hands that ought to be independent to protect us from the evil of the loyal, wicked individuals and their master. And when you have no independent hands to protect you from the hands of the loyalists who would be loyal to your detriment, ladies and gentlemen, you would not understand that the danger that would exist coming out of that is not only dangerous for you, but it's dangerous to your children. It is dangerous to your grandchildren, and it will destroy your unborn babies. That is the danger of loyalty without integrity. Mark it down. Put it on your wall. Loyalty could never work without integrity. Never. It didn't work then. It wouldn't work now. It wouldn't work in the future. It cannot work for the ULF. It cannot work for the PNM. It cannot work for the UNC. It cannot work for PDP. It cannot work for PEP. It will never work. Loyalty must have the foundation of integrity. Loyalty must be built on a foundation. And the foundation it must be built on is not friendship or a position or a benefit. It must build on the foundation of integrity. It is integrity that will build a country. It is loyalty for the wrong reason that will destroy the lives of the citizens of this country. And that is what we are experiencing. A group of individuals who will remain loyal, whether it's in the judiciary, whether it's in the law association, whether it's in the police service commission, whether it's in the TTPS, whether it's in the magistracy, whether it's in a ministry, whether it's in finance, whether it's in local government, whether it's anywhere. It destroys. It destroys, ladies and gentlemen. And that is why from 1956 to now, we are in this situation because we have too much disloyal people to the Constitution and to the country, and they're loyal to people who will use them to benefit and to stay in power. That is the reality. Boy, If people could only understand what I am saying into the hearing, and they could only put aside the partisan politics, and they could look at what I am saying into the hearing and examine it. I am talking to you educated people. I am talking to you who not so educated. I am also speaking to you, the uneducated. We cannot trust this government. We have seen a prime minister who will take a special branch report as the head of the National Security Council, who will receive a report and throw it in a corner and stand up and tell you, the country, that I stand with my minister. Loyalty without integrity. You know why you're suffering? You know why no international investors not coming here? Because these people know that when you have people who are loyal, open it for Malachi. When you have people who are loyal without integrity, these international investors know that we have seen a government who use a simple majority to mash up and break up a procurement legislation and to destroy any piece of legislation. You think these people not wise enough to know that we could invest our money in Trinidad and Tobago today, and the government could wake up tomorrow with a simple majority and pen up refunding? Welcome, caller.
Yes, this is Silver Fox here, Tobago. Yes, man.
Wild Fox.
Robbie, these people understand what you say, you know. They understand
Actually, move me a
every
minute.
word.
Move off the screen.
Every word you said, but what happened? These people sprayed Rowley. Trinidadians sprayed Rowley. Just imagine Rowley in a meeting and telling them last night, if they don't have no house, they pay property tax. And you know these people crap. These dunce people crap. These people are very uneducated. These PNM people are following Rowley. They feel they are so important because they're in a meeting with him. That if Rowley said jump over a wall, they jump and crap. There are some stupid, uneducated, uncommon sense. I don't know what to call these kind of people again. And we are the ones that make Rowley reach so far in doing his foolishness. It's time to stop Keith Christopher Rowley. I will tell all you something. Dropping a letter to the police commissioner is no use. Dropping a letter to the DDP is no use. Dropping a letter here and there is no use. Because these are the same people Rowley put there. You think they're going to trouble Rowley? We have to stand up and really stand up and get rid of this man. I am fed up. I'm fed up of he. I'm fed up of the short man. He only everything is laughing. This anti-gun. Boy, these people raising my pressure right now.
Welcome, caller. Why, caller?
All right, like we lost that caller. Well, I was about to tell you that this particular topic you're on is not as straightforward. It's not as straightforward, and there was a lot of discussion. Go ahead, caller.
Good night, Mr. Robert and Archie. How are you all going?
Yeah, caller. Welcome. Good night.
This is Sahina inside the house.
Go ahead,
Two
Saina.
issues I want to bring up. One is the Privy Council ruling, and I'm still trying to understand the government rationale for arguing the case. Let me put it simply the way I see it. How can they bring legislation to Parliament and don't know the outcome, don't know how to interpret it? Are they taking us for a fool? They drafting the legislation. So they, if they have the common sense and the competency, should know what the interpretation is. So this excuse that a lawyer does have could interpret it two ways. I think as the Prime Minister is used, hogwash, and the other term they're using, poppycock. The other issue I want to bring, a reading on a newspaper today, a lawsuit filed by a Coast Guard lieutenant, a senior person who apparently they wanted discipline for mashing up the Cape Class 2 somewhere in the ocean. That's the two boats they went and procured. You remember Small Pin and all of them went down south? And what is interesting in the article, you'll be surprised. He made a statement in his affidavit apparently that the boat or one of the boat were received without the proper radar intake. So they basically took a boat without the specification that they asked I think it's Australia to build for them. And you know what it reminds me of? The big OPVs that they went to buy and they asked for a particular defense system.
All right, Saina, you have to wrap up here. We have plenty of people on the line.
And because they couldn't get the defense system, and none of them cancel it. So it's the same problem they have with procurement legislation. I either match it up.
Yeah.
I'm going to have a nice night.
Thank you. Let me just make some of the calls short, Archie, because we have plenty of people calling you, right?
Yes, what I was going to tell you is that seeing that the topic is on Rowley's alleged refusal to take international observers, there's a lot of debate on that particular position that Rowley has taken, and hopefully callers is going to shed some different light with respect to Rowley's refusal for international observers. Go ahead, caller.
Good evening, Victor and Archie. Good evening.
Good day.
Victor, I'm regretting a bit worried. I didn't hear from you all last week. And anyway, thank God you're back here. Now, I will just listen to Senator. He is quite right. The PSLM does not want you to be educated. You see, they took away the laptop from them. And this is way back in the curriculum days. Talk about education in school, but they never gave people education. They do not want them to be educated because they don't want them to be able to read and write and understand what they are doing to them. You understand? That is what is going on. And Victor, I like the topic about the thing because we have to fight back this. He is born no, because I'm a spoiled child. No observers must come here. Right? And this is something people realize, you're taking it realize all the time. You are showing that you are the biggest dictator we ever had in this country. And you want to have a blessed night.
Thank you very much, caller.
Yeah, so I was saying there are a lot of learned people on a particular WhatsApp chat.
Yeah.
And I was surprised that a lot of lawyers are saying the ultimate decision is not Rowley's, that any major political party, of which, UNC is a major political party, can request of international observers to come and observe the elections. And let me tell you something, if a government in charge could have the ultimate decision to refuse international observers, then it defeats the purpose of international observation. Because then why would they have set up international observation procedures? Now, I was reading specifically the Carter Foundation, and it states very clearly in their rules that they comes into the country on the invitation of the major political parties. And when I listened to that clip with Rowley said they could come if they want to,
Yeah, free country.
So really and truly, we shouldn't get this chain up and this bullying from Rowley and go down the road thinking that Rowley could say no.
Right.
And
So-
himself still, let us just say, by some stretch of the imagination, they could pull some sort of diplomatic something and blank the people, it does not stop the UNC from putting certain things in place to ensure that they cannot thief that elections. Something similar to what the Guyanese people did. I saw them outside their polling stations, manning their polling stations, guarding their polling stations on bicycle. And when they saw things that was going to happen, that was happening, they stopped it. And I believe there's a lot of legal people involved in Trinidad that they are joining in these WhatsApp chat, and some very intelligent things is coming out that we could do. So all is not lost, but we need to just not sit back and allow things to happen. And I hope some of these lawyers that I am seeing in the discussion that is talking along these lines could call in and sufficiently educate the population, because we have to stop taking this kind of bully chain up from the media, from Rowley through the media.
Welcome, caller.
Hi, good night, Mr. Victor, Archie, and to everybody out there. Now, if it is Rowley saying that if they want to come, they could come. But we know very well, if they come and they find discrepancies, Rowley's not going to acknowledge it. He will say that the UNC bribed the people. You know, that is the first thing he will say. And he is saying that what PNM has been known for election, honest and free and fair election. He forgets some of us remember about the voter machine. What went on, we saw what went on in Tobago with the gerrymandering. And you know, when I hear learned people, like some lawyers and them are saying that an election is impossible to steal, like I will come back there, like they forget about the padding of the voter machine and all of that. Nobody cannot tell me that PNM cannot steal an election. They can do it with gerrymandering and they have other means of doing it. And we do not trust the PNM, we do not trust the EBC, and we are requesting international. We don't want CARICOM observers, you know, because they are all hand in glove. We want international observers. And some people are saying that Kamala was being irresponsible by calling for observers for local government elections because it was never done. So what? You must do it sometime or the other. And if it is that PNM, especially Keith Rowley, has a track record, we need to get observers here. Thanks a lot and have a good night.
I want to say, Ms. Santa Cruz, thanks for your contribution. That let me give you an experience that I had with the 2020 election. We had agents in a polling station in Labray. And you know what happened at that polling station? That polling station, while everybody remained and count and everything took place, you know what happened after the polling station closed? All the agents that we had there were fetting, eating and drinking by the PNM office. So when I hear people talking about you can't this and you can't that, money could do anything. You could have what agent you want inside when that count is taking place. And there is so many things could happen that I really doesn't study people, and that's that you talk, and who want to use the scenario to look good. Me have time with that. But the PNM could thief any election they want anytime. Trust what I'm telling you here today. I am telling you what I experienced we had in Labray.
Yeah, but that particular scenario you're speaking about, that observers will not be able to stop what happens there. That is just straightforward corruption on the part of the PNM on election day. But that has to do with your side choosing people that could be influenced, right? And once that could happen, observers or no observers, the PNM could steal the election like that.
So actually the point I make there is that you cannot rule out anything in an election. And the reason why I am surprised to know that Trinidad and Tobago would not support a call for observers where that particular thing is to ensure that their democracy would be preserved and that their vote would be recognized. I am shocked that people using this whole scenario as a political football.
Yeah, you know,
I
Victor,
shocked about that.
I really couldn't care about whether observers came or not. But you know when I started to get suspicious? When Rowley just had a ball, no observers. If you have nothing to hide, well, welcome them. Welcome them. That is when I started to get suspicious.
Actually,
Now,
they pay bigger money.
I
They
am
pay
of
bigger
the
money.
opinion that once you have your agents in place, on election day, it is difficult for the PNM to steal an election. The stolen elections are happening before the elections by gerrymandering, voter padding, intimidating, paying off. Those things happen before elections, right? But there are some little peculiar things that happen on election day, like where you see people looking like they're paying people to vote outside and things, right? Maybe those things are happening, and we in the UNC do not have sufficient manpower or observational skills to notice these things or to challenge these things, right? So let's say we see something looking like somebody paying somebody off to vote outside, and we see a gunman down in the corner there. You think we're going to challenge that? However, if an international observer is there and we tell them, well, look, this is what's happening. If they go to check and see what is happening, I think some cocoa will be in the sun. And this is why I had no problem with observers coming or not coming, but it's how Rowley objecting to it. And if you look on your screen here right now, you would see where he was one of the persons requesting observers in 2015.
Exactly.
So where all this thing about we here don't sophisticated and we just send people and all this. So what happened? All of a sudden we get sophisticated?
Actually, people blinded by the speech of Rowley. I'm going to tell you something. I want to come back to a point I was making with the learned lawyers and the brilliantness on the chats and so on. Actually, in this country, I have respect for few lawyers. I have respect for lawyers like Kyle Taklal Singh and a few others. And the reason why I say that is that half of these same lawyers that you probably speaking of, they don't want to expose themselves to the public, to tell the public that they are being misrepresented by their prime minister, or they are misrepresented by what is passing for legality in this country. You know, they want to hide behind the scene because they want to ensure that they still had the large brief to collect. They want to ensure that they're still collecting what they have to collect elsewhere. So that is why it's few lawyers I respect in this country. And when I saw lawyers like Kyle Taklal Singh and others who will come publicly and stand up and pronounce on given situation, that is where my respect goes. You see the chat lawyers who just feel chatting in a chat, private chat, and what they say would not come to the public. I don't really think up with that, because I always tell you, Archie, I say what I mean what I say, and I say it anyway. I'll say it behind the back, in front of the face, I'll say it anyway. So I ain't really thinking up too much with all this brilliant conversation on a chat, and they will not come public. They don't want to come here, you know. They don't want to come on facts, not fiction. They don't want to come here to talk, you know. But there is so much things that they can do. They could call a press conference, they could pronounce on certain things in this country, but all of them hide behind the Law Association and wait to see who could benefit from the treasury.
So Victor, let us just say it was Kamla Prasad Bisesa in charge, and Rowley called for observers, and Kamla say no observers. Do you think the media would have sit back and let things run so smooth as how it's running? Because to me, Rowley made this statement a couple days ago, and the media look as though they fine by that. As a matter of fact, they're trying to say, who is Kamla? She want to go and dirty up the country again? She want to go and write people again? Right? So I find like, and even self still, I was seeing somebody saying that even the Caribbean countries have some sort of sympathy towards the Keith Rowley administration, because had Kamla done something like that and say no to observers, you would have heard all the Mia Motley and all the beggar man from St. Vincent and thing talking about, oh, they this, they that, they this, they that. But I'm telling you, I am very suspicious now with the way Rowley just vehemently not wanting observers.
Actually, I would believe without a shadow of a doubt that the leader of the opposition would write CARICOM Secretariat, complained make a formal complaint on the denial of the request by the Prime Minister. I also believe that the leader of the opposition will write to the international bodies, the UN, the United Nations and others, and make a formal complaint
and the need for
on this situation.
The need for international observers becomes very, very, very prominent now, based on what had happened in Guyana. Guyana had a very scandalous general elections recently, and that government that was in place was basically just, they realize they're losing, they stop counting, and they wake up in the morning and say they win and declare, and they just scrap all the statement at the polls and publish the old statement at the polls, blatantly trying to steal the elections. And had it not been for an observers, right? Now people say observers don't have teeth, and you could do them this and you could do them that. But let me tell you something. They appeal to international agencies, and really and truly, when the observers in Guyana started to say what was taking place, international governments actually intervene and say, no, they're not recognizing that government. They're not recognizing that Guyanese government. And it's persistent pressure from international governments and international agencies that pressured, and a good Chief Justice who was fair, and they actually showed where the Guyanese government that was incumbent lost the elections. So this wasn't too long ago, and I think that having taken place, especially the CARICOM observer, the CARICOM countries would have said, listen to Mr. Rowley, if you have nothing to hide, and if you're so powerful and you're so good and things going so good, put on the observers. As a matter of fact, if you have observers and you beat the UNC fair and square, then you could bang up yourself on the chest.
And you're correct. Actually, I want to tell you point blank that for some reason, while we boast of the level of intelligence and education of the citizens of this country,
I feel I know where you're going.
For some strange reason, it seems as though that we are not really educated in Oachi.
I agree with where you're heading.
I am saying it seems as though that the people of Trinidad and Tobago it is just like we sensible but senseless. It might be an oxymoron, but it seems like we sensible but we senseless. It seems that we wise but we foolish. It seems that we educated but we uneducated. It seems as though we know what is right, but I will change here. It seems as we know what is right, but we benefit from what is wrong. And when you have a society that boasts of the education, and as one caller spoke earlier as to the reflection of Eric Williams, that the future of the children is in the school bag, I really understand now why we had reading books and so on that will teach us how the cow jump over the moon, and how Alice in Wonderland, and how Mary go and call the cat home. I understand that it appears as though that the level of education that has been provided in the minds of our citizens, who some now call themselves politicians, some doctors and some lawyers and some teachers, and it seems as though that they are living in some kind of dream, that they believe that what is happening today would not affect us tomorrow, and that we could just allow one ethnic group dominion over everything, including themselves. And yet, while they feel the full agony of what is happening, yet they tend to find some joy within the pain that they experience. Because right-thinking citizens in any country, I want to say, would never allow what is going on, what is passing as governance, to happen without some serious fight. I am saying that this country have to rise up. This country have to rise up and utilize every channel, every and any channel to remove this government legally. Don't get frightened, Archie.
Yeah.
You know the,
Well, boy,
you know the
you're
legal
say-
part.
you're saying that?
You know the legal part coming.
Yeah,
They
you're
will be
saying
smiling when they hear say that, and I ain't say legally yet. You know, they say, aha, we have him. We have him here now. He inciting.
Yeah, and that way I was leading to, you could get a good answer on local government elections day. If you do so, and you see less than 25% of the population turn out to vote, then you would continue with your smart but foolish story. Because here you getting an opportunity to say something, and you ain't coming out and say something.
Welcome, caller.
I have to go back again, Mr. Roberts. I wonder if somebody could answer this question. If I'm sure people have noticed it. Why it is? We talk about the secrecy and the secrecy. Why it is when you leave the country to go, you have one man who acting all the time for the 8 years and plus as Prime Minister. So you don't trust nobody on your side? You don't trust anybody on your way? Eh? I would like to find out that, but you know he will answer, because if I'm coming asking a question, he answer. Thank you, have a blessed night.
Thank you, caller. We have one man there as Prime Minister, and for 8 years, and might be more than 8 years, and that is so because the people of the country allowed it to be so. That is the long and short. We have the power. We have the authority. What we don't have is the strength, the fortitude to do what needs to be done in order to bring about this change that this country so needed. And as I say that, let me say this. Until you, Trinidadians and Tobagonians, until you decide to put yourself first, until you decide to put yourself first in demanding good governance, is until you will perish. It is until you will be robbed and raped and slaughtered and your homes invaded. Because the country will perish when you people do nothing. Take that how you want to take it, but the country will perish until you people decide to do something to bring about that badly needed change to save this country. I know our time is almost out, Archie.
Yes, and coming up on Sunday is usual press conference at 10:30 from the opposition office, live on all the UNC networks. On Monday, the UNC bandwagon moves into Rio Claro, home of MP Parry, where you would hear from speakers like Dr. Rai, Dr. Munilal, Tony Kozia, the chairman, David Law, Councillors Renel and Charlene, and of course, how I could leave out the star herself, the political leader. That is Monday night, 7 p.m. So that's the lineup, and screening continues in UNC headquarters. So that's it. Coming up after your show, you know, they had the debate on the valuation bill. Basically property tax. They want to bring in the property tax. And coming up after this, we have a replay of Senator Anil Roberts, the Douglas, coming up after your show.
Good. And what I want to say, Arch, as we wrap up, I just want to tell Trinidad and Tobago that the country will perish, and you will perish with it until you decide that good governance is what we must demand by whoever, from whoever sits in government. God bless. I out.
Minister in the Ministry of Agriculture read his presentation. I remember that predial larceny is also one of the crimes that's on the increase, and clearly his contribution may have been stolen before he came here today, because that contribution there added no substance to this debate whatsoever. He was clearly unprepared and underprepared. In other words, he was a bit forthright. So I won't be too harsh on my honorable colleague over there. He mentioned that the government foots the flood bill. But Honorable Minister, the government is responsible for flooding by not dredging the river mouths, by not clearing the drains, by not producing box drains, by not ensuring that our infrastructure is in a suitable, ready condition to serve the population. So if anyone should foot the bill, it should be the PNM who's responsible for the flooding. The Honorable Minister clearly as he said, he is very young. He was excited to pay his land and building taxes, because to be a member of the PNM and to come into the Senate and mention the word corruption, I would let him know to go and research and read about Tesoro, Lock Joint, Caroni Racing Complex, Project Pride, Financial Complex, Mount Hope, Churchill Roosevelt Highway, Taruba Stadium, go Napa and Sapa. Go if you want to read corruption, go in Balisay House where the air conditioner has just been put in by donations, and you will learn a lot about corruption. So it was very interesting. You want to hear some more? You could talk about in Tobago, my brother from Tobago, Milsherv, Scarborough Hospital, Buku, Goat Racing Complex for 100 million, fake oil, Petrotrain, Bridgemans, NGC right now, CCTV, Central Block, Mosquito Crack, all of that going on now. So please, we came to debate here the valuation, an act to amend the Valuation of Land Act in order for the PNM to oppress the people further, to implement property tax. And that in itself shows the heartlessness, the oppressive nature of a PNM government who cares not about the people whatsoever. It really struck me as a member of the People's National Movement would actually speak about Caroni 1975 Limited. After this PNM government in 2004 with a former minister shut down Caroni, and in the same breath the Honorable Minister mentioned Caroni 1975 Limited and celebrating Indian Arrival Day, when the shutdown of Caroni 1975 Limited brought more pain and decimation of the East Indian communities in the central of Trinidad and Tobago than ever before, that they're still feeling up to today. But to come here today and talk that, I think my young brother should take time and prepare much better before coming to debate. He then went on that without reliance on central government, this was a key point. And it was not only made by the Honorable Minister, it was made by the Minister of Finance also. They are touting this oppressive tax at this time after they have shattered the economy. And they are saying that somehow this property tax is going to be the cure for the panacea for local government funding. And the Honorable Minister actually said that now with this property tax, that there will have to be no reliance on central government. Honorable Minister, you are the central government. You don't want people to rely on you. You have just come in the Senate and confessed that you do not and are unable to deal with people at a ground level. The central government is the PNM. Listen, without local government reform, for those who do not understand, the current system, cabinet system, Westminster system, first past the post, the Honorable Prime Minister will select his cabinet, of which one of those ministers will be the Honorable Minister of Local Government. This minister is charged with the responsibility to go to the cabinet with a cabinet note after consultation with the 14 corporations, seeing their budgets, what they would like, and making their requests. This minister is then charged with the responsibility to go in the cabinet and fight for resources for the corporations, for the people of Trinidad and Tobago. For the minister to come and say that the central government has not supported people and there should be no reliance on the central government is a confession of incompetence, and the PNM must go. Because to come here now and say that with local government reform and the property tax that the money will go directly into the coffers of the corporations and therefore people will get service, means that the government has not, will not, and shall continue not to support local government corporations, and local government councillors. This is why you can have an Honorable Prime Minister who is also a member of Parliament for Dago Martin West, in which All three of the Diego Martins belong to the PNM. In fact, the acting prime minister once told me in a different place that he did not even bother to campaign, and he got 10,650 votes. The PNM is also in control of the Diego Martin Corporation, and you have a prime minister criticizing the corporation and saying that he as prime minister had to fix his own drain because his Diego Martin Corporation, with Diego Martin chairman, with Diego Martin councillors, with 3 Diego Martin MPs, was unable to solve any problem and provide resources. The problem is not the constitution. It is not local government ministry. It is not the people. The problem is the PNM. They're talking to the people. I talking to the people because I know that simple majority, my honorable colleagues on that side, they have already made up their mind. They're not interested in any debate. So it's okay. They have to do what they have to do. The people will deal with them as soon as the election call. But I would talk to the people because they told us, and I heard that message loud and clear a few years ago, that the PNM will be in our face, in the faces of the population, like a Jumbie from Lekoto. Well, let me tell you something. Jumbie and all that's dead. So very shortly, call the election and we will get rid of the PNM Jumbie. The Honorable Minister of Finance said 50% of all land in any categories would mean that the valuation rules are finished. And therefore, within 14 days, and clause 5, property tax could be implemented. Hold this phone there, it's disturbing me, yes. I want my colleagues to hear me carefully. Imagine this government did not come here to present, to get our Senate ready. You have staff. They have money, you have to make food, they have to prepare all of the order papers, you have people there to take Hansard, you have audio people, it's very expensive. Imagine the PNM put together a whole sitting of the Senate to come and make a shortcut to tax people. Why you didn't come and make a shortcut to keep people safe? Why you didn't make a shortcut to fix road better? Why you didn't make a shortcut to make sure people could turn on water in the tap? Why you didn't make a shortcut to come and create jobs? Why you didn't make a shortcut to serve the people of Trinidad and Tobago? All you come to bring a shortcut to go dip in people's pocket to take out the money that you done waste. Local government, no money under PNM policy. That's the difference. You see, all the PNM, all of you are debating against yourselves because local government and performance and allocation is about priority. If you have a prime minister and a cabinet that prioritizes local government, then the cabinet would allocate out of an average budget of $60 billion, they will allocate resources to the corporations because they care about the people. The fact that you are coming here to tell me that we need property tax so that the corporations will get resources is an admission that your priorities are not about the people. So instead of calling political meeting and talking about Piarco Airport, which you're boasting is the best airport in the Caribbean over the last 3 years, talk about why you don't like people, why you're not serving the people, why are you coming to take the people's money rather than allocating resources from the Treasury, from the Consolidated Fund, to the allocation to each and every corporation. But under the United National Congress, when you have a prime minister who cares, you did not see this problem in 2010 to 2015. All corporations, including Diego Martin where I live, which was solidly still PNM, the corporation had some partnership in it, but the MPs were still PNM. There weren't complaints about lack of resourcing and under-resourcing because the Prime Minister's heart was in the people. So therefore, the Minister of Local Government at that time, the Honorable Chandrish Sharma, would get resources that he came to the cabinet and argued for. So when you complain and you bring this bill and say that you need the money to tax to get down to the corporations, you must check yourself, because I believe you're on the wrong team. Because you seem to be saying that you want Kamla, you want the UNC, because you want people to get service. The Honorable Minister of Finance and other ministers, they keep saying, but in the USA and European Union and other countries, people don't mind paying tax, and they pay tax and it works and so on. That's very interesting, you know. But look around, take a deep breath. We not in USA, we not in European Union, we not in Canada, we in Trinidad and Tobago with a PNM government, so people don't want to pay tax because they've seen the wastage, the squandermania, the corruption, the heartlessness, the oppression of this tyrannical PNM. Yes. In fact, we are suffering from brain drain like never before. Every child that goes out to university, whether on scholarship, academic, or sporting, their parents are saying, if you get a job out there, stay out there, marry out there, don't come back here. So don't come to tell me about other people's country. If we were like them, where we could drive without busting tire and busting rim, if we were like them and mosquito wasn't biting we as 6 p.m. reach in Aranguez and St. Joseph, if we were like them and local government was working, we wouldn't mind paying tax. But we have PNM. Then the Honorable Minister boasted that $540 to $2,700 extra a year is fair. The Honorable Minister of Finance said that is a fair tax. Now, how he determined that, I would love to know. Because a fair tax, if you have money, you could say that that might be fair. But when you take away fuel subsidy and you put online 7% tax and people lost their jobs and no increase and you offer them 0.001011% and inflation is at 45% for food since 2015, and medicine has gone up by 75%. When $100 you go in the grocery and you come out with 2 cricks and a piece of cheese, where the grocery now cutting up cheese and locking it in a cabinet because people stealing cheese. If those are the conditions out there, what you coming to tell me about a fair tax? You don't take away the fuel subsidy, so anybody with a car, already 56,000 cars, the smaller cars, the Tida Wetman, the B13, them kind of cars, they're off the road because men have to determine when to use the car, when to use the gas. Should I use it to pick up my wife from work or the children from school? Children, all they take maxi. I have to go for the wife because her shift late. That's how people are operating in this country, and y'all PNM so out of touch. You come to say that $540 to $2,700 extra dollars is fair, and when you have zero, how that could be fair? That means you're going minus $2,700. Y'all are not aware of what is out there. You think the crime is just escalating? What? Because Trinidad and Tobago, we just have a bad gene? The social conditions are horrendous. The gap between the rich and the poor is being exacerbated every day by policies of no care. And you can hear it in that. How could a Minister of Finance come in the Senate that is being live to the country and say 2,700 is fair? If I hand out 2,700, how are we going to pay that? Fair or unfair? It is oppressive. But clearly there's election in the air, because the Honorable Minister of Finance have made a study of him. He's a very good debater. I don't agree with him on many occasions, but this afternoon he was very humble. He was talking softly. He even wanted to educate the population. When has a PNM government wanted to educate the population? You shut gate down from 726 million down to 300 million. You shut down laptops. You didn't build a school. You have over 40 schools that were between 70% and 85% completed under Tim Gopi Singh and Kamla Prasad Biswas in September 2015. Now they're going down minus because people have vandalized and stolen material from the schools. You cut MIC centers, NESC centers. You shut down TTHTI. You cut sports. What education y'all interested in? But the Honorable Minister of Finance, you know when it's election, they has changed their tone. What? They changed from you haven't rioted yet to, well, let me come to educate you. And he wanted to give us a history lesson. But I would have preferred to get a history lesson of the PNM's closure of Caroni 1975 Limited and the pain that it gave to families and people who lost those jobs and everything they had. I want to hear a history lesson on why Petrotrin shut down and still shut down. What was the need for that? I want to hear about Caridoc, that it underwater and now 90 people, they always say they're on furlough, but in 80 days you will see that furlough mean you're gone. I want to hear about TT, HTI, MIC, NIC centers. I want to hear about all of that. These decisions.
And 46-1.
Senator, as much as you are responding to, and it is noted that you are responding, please do your very best to tie it into one of the 5 clauses of the bill, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. But Mr. Vice President, if I'm responding to the Honorable Minister of Finance, I hope he was dealing with clauses, because whatever clause he was responding, he was dedicated to, I responded to that. But I will move on. I know it gets a little testy for some members of the government, but the point I'm making is that these decisions, these policy decisions of the PNM, to drop the GDP of this country from a high of $185 billion in 2015 down to $128 billion in 2020, and now you get a 1.5 or 2% increase or growth. When you shrink or you lose 100 pounds in weight, and then you gain 2 pounds, you ain't overweight yet, you still have 98 more to go. So therefore, when you shrink the economy by 30%, and then you tell me it's growing at 2.5%, you come to claim that you have done well. You have not. And what you need to do first and foremost is to return Trinidad and Tobago's economy to at least pre-Rowley levels, pre-Prime Minister and member of Diego Martin levels, into Kamla Prasad Bisesa member for Siparia levels. And then we could discuss other revenue streams. Imagine the PNM is calling a tax a revenue stream. That means you're bereft of ideas. You're bereft of creative ideas. You don't know about diversification. At least 3 different ministers sat here today, stood up here and said that taxing people is a revenue stream. That's what the PNM. But other people who understand how to create jobs, how to encourage foreign direct investment, how to move an economy further, how to move into the technological industry, the fourth estate and so on, as illustrated and enunciated by Kamla Prasad Bisesa, those will be revenue streams, and therefore you don't need to tax people again. You know, I like to eat my beef ribs and things. I take it medium. But I went to a certain restaurant, and I called them and I said, I want it medium, please. I know you all like to overcook it. Because when it comes to meat and things, in USA they like to do their steak and things different way. But today we heard about USA. So let me talk about Trinidad and Tobago. And they burn up the meat, but I didn't check it because it was a pickup. So I took it home, and then when I reach home and I see it well done, I don't pay for it. So I left it like that. I ate it as best as I could. And I had to take that cost as a sunk cost. But I chose now to never go back there. Because I don't ask you all, I tell you all what I want, and you didn't give me it. So I say, I'm not going back there. Now, let me ask you it this way. If you go to a restaurant and you get food poisoning of the worst kind that debilitates you for about 2 days, you can't eat, you spend all the time in the WC, would you go back to that restaurant ever again? I think not. So when you have a PNM government who has shown that they are callous, that they are about recusals in the cabinet, about the rich getting richer and sprinkling crumbs for the lower middle class to pick up and hopefully say, great is the PNM. The country will not go back there. The PNM has been unmasked, and today is the worst example of an oppressive, heartless government coming without ideas to dip in the pockets of people who are suffering from their decision-making and lack thereof. The timing. I heard some of the government members talking that the people, if not now, when? Well, let me tell you, if not now, when? Definitely not now, because you have turned this economy, you have shrunk it, you have shredded it. Over 123,000 people have come off the NIB list. The energy sector is waning. No foreign direct investment. People's money purchasing power parity is down. Inflation is up. Unemployment is at its highest. So therefore, not at this time. If you ask me when, well, the answer will be when you come out and the UNC come in and we create diversification in the economy, we create 50,000 jobs, we improve the energy sector, bring back the refinery, create different revenue streams, make people safe again, understand that investment in our population is important. At that time, when people could depend on a government that will service them properly, that will be the time. So your answer is not now, because you're all still in government. So call the election. And if you don't want local, call the general election, because some of you all sound very arrogant here today. But UNC will never reach back and they will never win. Well, okay, if you all are truthful, call it. Don't just give me gun talk. Call the election. When we talk about consistency, right? We have to talk about consistency throughout this debate. Things that are consistent are brilliant, and people don't mind paying. So in the USA, European Union, Canada, Norway, people don't mind paying taxes, property taxes, other taxes, because the bus runs on time. The roads are smooth. They get water and they tap hot water and so on, the heating, the gas don't go off, electricity don't go, and so on. So the government performs, so people have no problem paying higher levels of taxes because of the consistency of service that they get. You will want to buy Royal Castle because the pepper is the best, and every time you buy Royal Castle, it's the same pepper. It tastes exactly the same. I eaten by my doubles man 34 years. Why? Because every morning you go there, it is consistently delectable, delicious, and perfect. Bara melting in your mouth, right? So therefore, to come here when your performance as central government and local government is woeful at best, it is consistently poor. To ask people to pay for poor service is wrong. When you talk about this property tax, I heard someone laugh when my colleague Senator Lyda said, what about the evaluation? Why are we talking estimates? So are you all to believe, or would you like us to believe, that in this country, where there's an adversarial climate, you have PNM and you have UNC, that a PNM government appointing PNM people to come in everybody's house, when you have videos of PNM CPEP crews cutting grass by PNM house, and whenever a UNC activist is bush for days, and then on the other side, it cut clean. In a country where PNM operates like that, how can we in the United National Congress and other citizens feel safe that the estimates of PNM appointed people, appointed by the PNM cabinet, appointed by the PNM Minister of Finance, appointed by the PNM Minister of Local Government, appointed by the PNM if it's Revenue Authority or BIR, will give everyone a fair shake? If they come by me, you feel I will get a nice even estimate and fair? I think not. I mean, I fight in war since 1979. But for citizens out there, this is not right. A tax must not only be fair, it must appear to be fair. And then people will consider it at the right time, when they're getting service, when they can expect that when they pay more, they will get a better service. But under this PNM, service is a misnomer. But somehow, the math's not mathsing. Because since this property tax discussion way back with the Honorable Patrick Manning, member for San Fernando East, back in 2008, 2009, I read estimates, and I see that he almost came back in a meeting in Malabar last night with the Honorable Minister of Youth and things, nearly introducing Patrick Manning as the Prime Minister. A Freudian slip, but you could see that they're hoping and they're wishing for that. Yes, because they're trying to go back in time because it's not the right time. They know even the PNM is not enjoying this time. They want to go back to better times. But I remember reading in the estimates in 2010 and so on that the total take for residential would be 175 million. And even back then I said, but what is this? Out of a 54 billion budget, 60 billion budget, what do you want to humbug people for $175 million for? And then they say no, and even in this debate here, 15 years later, I'm hearing estimates that some corporations will get 67 million and so on overall from residential, maybe 400 million. And I'm saying to myself, but there are other ways to generate much larger sums of money. So what is really behind this? And you know, it's sad to say, but we on this side don't trust all you. When Kamla Prasad Bisesa in 2019 told the Honorable Attorney General back then, when they brought a bill downstairs about local government and not using it to extend and deny the rights of people to vote, he said poppycock. But now we see that poppycock is real. So therefore we don't trust y'all. So when y'all come to say, you know, this is land and building taxes, I say, but I'm trying to understand. What is the quantum? If you focus and bring back the refinery, you could make 50 times that in a year. Correct. If you energize, if you negotiate with the upstreamers and so on and find gas on blocks, you could get more revenue. What is the PNM? And some of my colleagues here, I will have no idea what I am talking about. Because they wouldn't understand that in the PNM, the great Dr. Eric Williams once said you could put a crapo in a PNM tie and they will win. People thought that meant that the brand of PNM was so strong and so on and they must win. The truth of that was, what he meant was, the MPs don't determine policy. That the men behind the stage who's sitting down there, who don't come for nobody to vote, they are the ones running the country. That's what he meant. So these colleagues here will not know what I'm talking about.
Exactly.
I'm linking it as clause 5, yes.
Exactly.
And what I'm saying right here, sir, is that when I think about this, I remember a period in Port of Spain, Diego Martin area in the 90s, when certain people who became prominent in the PNM and took control of the Port of Spain Corporation and went in there as normal people every day, came out as 100 millionaires. What? Because
that happened?
Because what happened back then with land and building taxes, people who were unable or did not pay, whether elderly, whether they forgot and so on, what would happen is a clause will come in that the government, the corporation, could then put their properties up for sale and auction. And these properties from Port of Spain down to Caranage, certain people bought up all of these properties and they are billionaires now. So I'm asking now, here in the Senate, is this why this property tax is coming? So that poor little old ladies and people all over Trinidad and Tobago who may not be able to pay or may not be able to do it, after a certain period, it allows the powers that be to auction the house off, and those with money and capital could buy up properties at a very cheap rate. Is that what the PNM wants? Because this cannot be revenue generation. This cannot be about local government. This cannot be about policy. This cannot be about box train. This cannot be about pothole ranging. This is from behind the stage, behind the Balizé when they're talking about. This is something nefarious to make the rich get richer and the poor stay poorer. I want some PNM to answer, but not y'all. Somebody who's behind the stage, not y'all in front of the stage. Now, finally, Mr. President, the PNM is too costly to citizens. Face it. That's why you're afraid for election. That's why you have to go to Privy Council to try and fight. That's why you can't call the election date yet. That's why you're trying to stretch it to 90 days. That's why. Because you're too costly, because the people have to pay. For you to be there rather than Kamla and the UNC, they have to pay for the removal of the subsidy. VAT, Kamla had VAT on 77,000 items. You put it back. 7% online tax, you tax. Unavailable forex, people buying foreign exchange out there for $10 a US now. Cutting gate, the children cannot go to school. Cutting food cards, 42,000 down to 18,000.
46-1, please, on a point of order. (46)1 has been raised. I ask you to proceed in your wind-up.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. All clap the President, Vice President. We talk, Mr. Vice President, we're talking about tax. And I am showing that the PNM, you would not need to oppress the people with tax if you left Kamla policies there, because the people you have taken from them, you've taken the subsidy, you have taken gate from 726 million down to 300 million, you have taken regular fuel from the fishermen, so fish prices gone up, inflation is eating away at people money. People have no money, they have to buy books, you take away textbooks, you take away laptops. Where you want these people to get this money to pay your oppressive property tax when you have suffered the people for so long? I say scrap the tax, forget it. So, Mr. Vice President, and I can show you that not only by your example and another example in this very house, that even in an adversarial political situation where there is red and yellow, there's PNM policy of the elite and there's a UNC policy of support for the poor, that even in that situation, with good people sitting at the head, debate, righteousness can proceed without interruption because of fairness, equity, and class. So on your part and on the part of the President, I thank you very much, sir.
Senator Thompson, aye.
Mr. President, I thank you for recognizing me. As I rise to speak on this topic, which relates to property tax, I well remember the last time I expressed certain views, I was crucified by social media, and it wasn't even Lent. But before Lent comes Carnival, and with Carnival comes Calypso, and I recall a Calypso sung by the Mighty Sparrow. The doctor referred to in the Calypso was not the one that leads the present government, who was very young at the time, but Dr. Eric Williams, the father of the nation, our first Prime Minister of revered memory. And Sparrow sang, circa 1958, you can't get away from the tax. You could jump high or low, you can't get away from the tax. Doctor or no doctor, you can't get away from the tax. Even if you kneel down and cry, you can't get away from the tax. Sparrow won't tell you a lie, you can't get away from the tax. So he was singing really about income tax, not property tax, which is the subject of this bill. But no form of taxation is popular or welcome, but taxes are necessary. In 1936, former American President Franklin E.D. Roosevelt described taxes as the dues that we pay for the privileges of membership in an organized society. Edmund Burke on American taxation said in 1774, to tax and to please no more than to love and be wise is not given to men. Much has been said about the timing of the tax. Not now has been the cry, and we've heard it so many times today. COVID has decimated our business. It has destroyed many a household income, some have said. Will Rogers wrote in his autobiography, when everybody has got money, they cut taxes, and when they're broke, they raise them. That's statesmanship of the highest order. And you know, I spoke to friends in the Bahamas, Barbados, Jamaica, about what is happening in your country. How do people feel about property tax? Are they complaining? In none of the countries I can hear that there was a problem with the populace about tax. One of them, a judge, said to me, "You Trinidadians, you're too indisciplined. It's not a problem here." Many want government to take the advice Stalin gave to Dorothy. Wait, Dorothy, wait, Dorothy, wait, they're saying. Wait, doctor, wait. But the government is singing another tune. Now is the time. Now is the time. Now is the time. Will there ever be a good time to institute property tax? There will never be consensus on this. Am I in favor of property tax being instituted? I am, most decidedly so. Benjamin Franklin said, "In this world, nothing is certain but death and taxes." So Sparrow was right. You can't get away from the tax. As I said before, this bill is about property tax. It lays the groundwork to usher in property tax. J.K. Rosengard of Harvard Kennedy School, in a paper published in 2012 by Mosava Ramini Center for Business and Government, entitled "The Tax Everyone Loves to Hate, Principles of Property Tax Reform," made important points about property tax, which I will share. If I may, Mr. Vice President, yes, thank you. According to Rosengard, the reason for annual tax on land and buildings are it is often the main source of local government discretionary revenue and thus an essential component to fiscal decentralization that supports local autonomy and complements intergovernmental fiscal transfers. So in addition to the money that you get from central government, this tax is going to help the local government bodies. I trust, therefore, that the link between this amendment bill and the recent laws relating to local government reform can be discerned. To continue with Rosengard's analysis, it is economically efficient because it is hard to avoid and easily enforceable if evaded. It is perceived as socially equitable because it is roughly progressive, loosely correlated with local government benefits, a relatively good proxy for tax on multi-year income, and a way to enable the public sector to derive a share of private sector windfall gains from appreciation of real estate values, largely due to public investments in previously unserviced land. He said that although ubiquitous, the property tax is also universally despised for reasons that are well documented. And among the reasons he advanced were, while the high number of statutory taxpayers creates a large tax base, a good thing in theory, it can be a political and administrative nightmare in practice. While the tax's high visibility is good for government transparency and accountability, heightened taxpayer awareness also tends to intensify taxpayer resistance, and there is some degree of resistance. So while computer-assisted mass appraisal and other applications of appropriate technology increase administrative efficiency and effectiveness, property evaluation nevertheless still has a subjective component. While the tax is seen as fair in general, in some cases, there is no direct relationship between tax liability and ability to pay the tax, which leaves some taxpayers asset-rich but cash poor. And we see a lot of it in this society. We see people who have huge mansions, but they have no money. So they are asset-rich and cash poor. And I'll return to that later again. So while tax supports local government autonomy, it really helps with the local government autonomy, it can also worsen regional disparities in wealth as the rich get richer and the poor poorer. Now, all municipalities, as we know, are not created equal. Some, of course, are going to generate a greater degree of revenue than others. So while citizens might accept the tax in principle, there is still widespread resentment in some countries to enforcement proceedings, sometimes seen as a threat to the sanctity of the home. So this dilemma is real and profound. Most countries have property tax, but few of their citizens like the tax. The property tax is a tax everyone loves to hate. Countries can seldom live with the tax as initially designed, yet neither can they live without the tax at all. So what do we do? So Rosengart gives the 4 primary rationale for initiating property tax reform as to improve fiscal performance. Social equity, we don't always get it right, but we're striving for that. Economic efficiency and administrative cost effectiveness. He advances low revenue yield as the most common reason for property tax reform. So it is a revenue stream, and revenue enhancement as a principal objective for reform. Another is horizontal and vertical inequities and perceived unfairness of property tax liabilities that rise at a much higher rate than income growth. Mr. President, Vice President, I sincerely hope that the inequity question will be firmly addressed. I recall many years ago attending a lawyer's dinner at Hilton Hotel. Forgive me if I've shared this before. At our table was a senior counsel whose name appeared on the list published in 2015 and again in 2023 of lawyers who have received millions of dollars from state briefs. Nobody here is involved. He lives in an upscale suburb in Port of Spain. He shared with us the amount of money he was paying in property tax. It was considerably lower than my property tax for my humble home along the East-West corridor. I was shocked and protested the unfairness of our disparate assessment. And he laughed and said that the mayor dare not interfere with that. I am watching and waiting. Is property tax reform necessary? Undoubtedly so. Mr. President, Mr. Vice President, as we go forward to institute this property tax, I want to see in the law equity and a method of meeting what Rosengart sees as the challenge of property tax reform. How can we make the tax less taxing? And this bill addresses this question to some extent. It is a short bill comprising 5 clauses. Of course, the length of the bill is no gauge of the duration of the debate, as we have witnessed so often within these hallowed walls, where one point can be labored for all of 45 minutes. So clause 1, as we've heard, gives a short title, Valuation of Land Amendment Bill 23. Clause 2, as is usual with all bills, is the interpretation section and explains that the word "the Act," when used in the bill, means the Valuation of Land Act. Clause 3 amends section 2 of the Act by inserting into the definition of annual rental value the words "an estimate of." So that definition now reads, annual rental value means an estimate of the annual rent which particular land is likely to attract, having regard to the purpose for which the land is actually used, occupied, or tenanted, or where it is not actually used, occupied, or tenanted, having regard to the purpose for which it is reasonably suitable. I'll return to that. Clause 4 of the bill amends section 7 by inserting after the word 6 the words "or 29. This amendment seeks to capture within the property tax net the responsible party who may be required to file a return, whether it is the owner or the person in actual possession of the land, because sometimes you really don't know who the owner is, and somebody has been in possession for quite a while. Now, the rationale for this annual rental, is something that we could develop some more. Clause 5 repeals section 7A and substitutes a new section with the effect that instead of the stipulation that 50% of all categories of land should be valued before the Act comes into effect, that 50% of any of the categories of land can be a starting point for the Act to come into effect. The Commissioner will, in that circumstance, as having risen, advise the Minister, who will within 14 days declare that the valuations are in effect. Now, to me, this is a clever tactic to get out of a hole that the government dug for itself and now realize they must escape from that if they are to proceed with the tax. Our property tax is calculated on the annual rental value, that is the annual rent, or rather an estimate of the annual rent that a property can generate if it is rented on the open market. To understand the tax payable, one has to look at Schedule 1 of the Property Tax Act, which reveals that what is payable is 3% of the annual taxable value for residential and 5% for commercial property. Now, I have heard a strong argument made today for small business, and I would advocate that we do not lump commercial property in one group, and we can separate small business and stipulate what is a small business and have a smaller tax, perhaps 2% for those businesses that really went through a very hard time and are still struggling. when we had our JSC, on the effect of COVID, we heard some rather strong stories, sad stories about what has happened with some of the small businesses across from the various chambers. So most jurisdictions rely on the actual value of the property to calculate property tax. If one looks at the Guyana Revenue Authority Act, it speaks of tax being a percentage of the net worth of the property. The Bahamas Real Property Tax Act, Chapter 375 of the Statute Law of the Bahamas, looks to a percentage of the market value of the property, and this percentage varies increasingly according to the value, from properties worth $250,000 to upwards exceeding $5 million. There is provision in the Bahamas Act for relief from tax by total or partial exemption or deferment of liability where the minister is satisfied that on account of the impoverished condition of a person and his inability to improve such condition significantly by reason of age, impaired health, or other special circumstances, that undue hardship to that person would otherwise ensue. A relief certificate is granted by the minister upon proof of age, health, and financial circumstances, and such other matters relevant to the determination of the application as the minister may require. The relief certificate may be revoked if there is alteration in the circumstances of the person or breach of any condition of the certificate. Barbados Land Tax Act, Chapter 78 also provides for relief to pensioners of 50% in certain specified circumstances. And a Trini friend of mine takes advantage, she tells me, of that every year. So perhaps the minister may explain why our legislation looks to rental value to determine the quantum of property tax payable. Is there an advantage thereby derived? Pray tell. He spoke very briefly on it. I'd like to hear a bit more. Section 21 of our Property Tax Act provides for a landowner who is dissatisfied with the assessment of tax by the board to lodge an objection within 21 days next after the annual tax becomes due. Section 23 of our Act carries a similar provision as the Bahamas law for deferral of payment of tax. But strangely, nowhere in the public discourse and condemnation of the proposed property tax did I hear any mention of this relief measure. I thought that omission rather curious. Today I have heard in the chamber that there is no mention of what happens after deferral. And none of the ministers who came in after, none of members of the government, sought to say that there is in fact a provision in the law which deals with that. When you look at Section 27 of the property tax, it says, subject to subsection 2, any period of deferment specified in an authorization issued under Section 23 shall determine on the death of the owner concerned, and thereupon the tax in respect of which deferment was authorized shall become immediately due and payable out of the estate of the deceased owner. But that is not the end of it all. Subsection 2 says, where the board is satisfied, having regard to the impoverished condition of the successors in title of the estate and his inability to improve his financial position significantly by reason of age, impaired health, or other special circumstances, that undue hardship to that successor in title would otherwise ensue, the board may recommend that the president authorize the total or partial exemption of the tax payable up to the death of the deceased owner. So the law does make provision for what can happen after the period of deferment. Part 2 of our valuation of land tax also has provisions for notice of valuation to be given to the person in possession of the land. It has also provision for objection to a valuation, as mentioned earlier. And there is also provision for appeal to a valuation tribunal from a decision of the Commission of Valuations. So all of these provisions are there in the law. Along the way, there are various steps that a landowner can take on the road to achieving a fair and just valuation. So some of the seeming harshness of the law is in fact obviated by the enactment of these provisions. So there is no doubt there is fear and trepidation at the prospect of the initiation of this property tax regime. In the past, until 2009, land and building taxes were paid